Friday meeting of the Phenotype February Phenotype Development Evaluation Workgroup. So we have a busy agenda. One of the first topics that we want to talk about is Hypoxic-Ischemic Encephalopathy. This was P10 of the Phenotype February effort for 2023. The leads of this phenotype are Kaiser Aziz and Evan Minty. They are here on the call. So let's spend a few minutes just catching up on the phenotype and then talking about next steps that's needed to get it to a stage of completion. So Kaiser and Evan, go ahead. Can you give us an update?
Evan, I defer to you, and then I'll pick it up.
Well, I mean, you were already kind of mid-sentence there, so I think we're fairly happy with the definitions. And the main, I mean, the main push now was to actually put it out as a product and a paper and characterization paper. And part of that we thought would be well served by making a couple of configuration changes to Cohort Diagnostics. And I think largely like that we have a pretty good idea as to what the specifications would be. And it was just kind of a lag with everything else going on, but involved the kind of specification of a set of concepts that we wanted to use for the pretty table output, and then at some time windows, which we were that remains to be seen how that will look, just because as you get more granular, it might not look there might be some features to the data that don't look as nice when you zoom in, but I have in front of me kind of the time windows that we discussed in terms of a timeline of kind of I think 0 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, 8 to 28 days, 28 days to a year to 2 years, and greater than 2 years in terms of characterizing the HIE cohort. So I think Kaiser, we had discussed, and I know there's a paper out there. I looked through my various kind of inputs and I couldn't find. I was like, is it on Teams? Like, where did we send this around? But there was like there was a previous paper that has basically the concept sets that we were interested in. I just couldn't dig it up. So sorry to have you reload my RAM there.
Yeah, and I could jump in. Is pretty much the pretty table. I could share my screen to illustrate the point best. I think it's probably easiest. So this is just the output from the current cohort diagnostics and what it looks like. So if you see age 0 to 4, so this in itself creates some issues because we're missing some of the important neonatal time periods right here. So just making this output in itself better. And then in terms of the problems themselves that are defined, these are adult-centric problems. So just trying to hone in on specific neonatal problems, such as, did you have retinopathy? Did you have issues with your vision? Did you have issues with IVH, bleeding in the brain? Did you have issues with acute renal impairment does work, neonatal sepsis? So just making sure like the outputs and the outcomes are compatible with neonatal things. So that was just one thing. And the time periods, like Evan was mentioning, because from a neonatal perspective, we're looking at things in like the newborn period. So something in terms of the 1 to 28, 28 to 1 year of age, 1 to 2 year of age. Because when we include everything like this, we miss out on the granularity needed. And I know, just going through the email that Gowtham you had sent, in terms of that, the candidate definitions, which the work we had done throughout Phenotype February 1966, that was a good candidate. That's
the one that's in the form, yeah.
Yep, that's the one in the form, and the other one that I've been playing around and working with was the 1781975 and big. Those are like the two, and just the reasoning for the two is one is pretty much a claims. The 66 is a claims-based definition, and then it works on the claims and some EHRs, and the 1975, because it includes APGARs and temperatures and certain procedures, it works well in the EHRs.
Okay.
So got some quick question for Cohort Diagnostics. What do we have options for the pretty table at this point for custom pretty tables? Has Jamie put that in?
Yeah, so hold on to that thought. I'll come to that
Okay.
topic. So there's two parts to this conversation. There's the first part. There are two. It sounds like based on Kaiser and Evans' comments here, there are two candidate cohort definitions that they have aligned on, which probably is the ones that can be considered, gone through the phenotype development evaluation process. So they have been executed on more than one data source. The cohort diagnostic output has been reviewed. It has been publicly done in an OHDSI forums. And if they feel like they wanted to submit that for like as a final, that's something we can accept it to the phenotype library and say it's done, right? I think that's because it's part of the phenotype February process also. So that's one consideration. The second consideration is about the configurations. So I'll answer your question right now. I think I'll share my screen. So this, Joel, the functionality to support customized versions of the pretty table has been around for some time. It was just not end user accessible. So this is my local software. This is the same tool that Kaiser showed, that's published on data.odyssey.org, but it's running on my local. So it's all the data is local here on my local machine. It's the same pretty table that Kaiser showed. Obviously, these components, these diseases are not meaningful for this particular cohort. So this pretty table is not useful by itself. But I'll show to you and everybody how the pretty table works technically. So there are in this software, this is my local instance, this is the RStudio environment, and there are certain files that populate this software. I'll go very quickly. There's one input specification file that so here there is a folder. So I'm right now, Joel, you know this. I'm actually on the. I'll go to the GitHub page. So I'm going to go to github.odyssey.org, shiny deploy. This is the actual code that was running the app that Kaiser just showed. And I'm going to scroll down. Each one of these folder is a shiny application that's on data.odyssey.org. And one of them is the Hypoxic-Ischemic Encephalopathy. So here is the Hypoxic-Ischemic Encephalopathy shiny app. And that's the actual URL that Kaiser pointed to. Now, inside this is all the code. Inside this is a folder called data. And in that is a table called table 1 specs long. If I click on it, here is the input specification that populates the table 1. So there's a column called label order. There's a column called label. There's a column called sequence, covariate ID, and analysis ID. If these are changed, then the table changes. And that's all it is. And so if I go to, what is that? So I'm going to just copy this path from here to go there. And that's the shiny app. Here's the code characterization, generate table. And there is the table 1 specifications. So each of these covariate IDs have a meaning. So before I go to the column number 4 and 5, let me talk about the column number 1 and 2. Column number 1 and 2 are the labels. That's this age group. So age group. So then the second group is gender. So that will be labeled number 2, gender. And then you want medical history general. That's label number 3. Supposed to be, well, there's no label number 3 because there was no race information in that data source, so it just disappears. But label number 5 is medical history general. So the next available data after age group and gender happens to be medical history general. And then after that comes medical history cardiovascular disease. That's over here. Now, inside each of these groupings are the individual rows that populate. So age group 0 to 4, gender, female, male, medical history over here. So this age group specification, that's based on these IDs. So these IDs was what is used to populate. So like if I go to this one, gender, and I look at this number 8532001, that's the covariate ID for, I believe, the female gender. Now, the way this is represented is this is the first, if you divide this big number by 1000, then subtract this number, you will get 8532. So 8532001 minus 1 divided by 1000 is 8532. 8532, if I look up OHDSI concept IDs, that's 8532 is female. Concept ID 8532 is female. So now that's this a simple explanation. So I'm going to talk about the medical history.
So please, why is there really, what was the name of the last column?
The name of the last column is covariate ID and analysis ID.
Right, ID. Right now, I'm just so why is there that kind of mathematical formula that relates the covariate ID, analysis ID, and the actual concept? That's not something I've ever kind of come across before. I don't, maybe it's something that's used more frequently in the community.
Yeah, I see.
It's not a mathematical formula at all. It's just a paste function. It's just mushing together three numbers.
Okay. All right. I'll let you keep going, because I'm sure there's something to analysis ID too that you rock.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to the next heading, which is medical history general. So if you want to change medical history general to say comorbidities related to first day of care. So that means convulsions, intracranial hemorrhage or something of that sort. You can give any label you want. So here, if you, for your pretty table, you can change medical history general to any label you want, and that will become part of that heading here. So this medical history general will change to any label you want. Now, all the things that are inside it, this set can now be changed also. As of right now, this number, which is 40069699203, if you subtract 203 and divide it by 1000, you get this number. If I take that number and I search that in Athena, that's acute respiratory disease. Now, if you replace that with some hypothermia, that's your SNOMED code. You're basically changing this number, replacing 406969 with 435371. So you'll have 435371-203. And now the pretty table will show you hypothermia. Now I'll try to actually do that. So here in my app, I'm going to go and replace this with that and just run the app. And
that's conditioned group, right?
yeah. So
It'll only show it if you built it. It depends what went into your cohort definition, characterization specifications, which has a default.
Yeah, so remember, Jamie, all concept IDs in that analysis ID are computed. Since hypothermia is part of the condition occurrence, this result's available. So it's now showing you in the pretty table that 8.4% of this data source had hypothermia concept ID.
Is that
on that window? This is
that seems high. Is that past the smell test? Is that these kids have hypothermia?
Well, what window is the pretty table Do you guys remember? Is it does it include day 0?
Yeah, the pretty table includes the entirety. So
Yeah.
that's the issue.
Yeah, that's I think it's the lifelong incidence of it.
Yeah. And
I thought pretty table was 365 to 0.
Yeah,
the temporal windows are. But in terms of the hypothermia group, the neonatal HIE cohort, we're getting hits on hypothermia for
that's expected.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty good. So, and that's the, that's the condition, that's a condition group. So hypothermia, whatever what you had, is going to bring in hypothermia and all its descendants. So it's not a specific, I'm just pointing this out because that's better. You don't need a specific code in there, and if they don't match it, you get nothing. This is pulling in all the hypothermia ones.
Mhm.
So that's actually pretty good. Yeah, so Jamie Gilbert hasn't done this. Yeah.
He's not made an easy version for it. So right now it is still.
Yeah.
No,
swapping in the table spec is fine, but you have to do it in the. You deploy it. Yeah, I guess you could deploy it out on the server.
Yeah, so this is the file that gives you details about how it's actually calculated. So analysis ID 203 is actually a medium-term start dates with the condition error table. So it's possible to do it. You just follow this framework. The key input here is like a mock-up. What would you like in this table? And once you have the mock-up, like the headings and the individual components, then we have to think about what concept ID represents that individual component. Yeah, now there might be a scenario where, and this is a more advanced next level, there might be a scenario where an individual concept ID may not be sufficient. That's when there is this idea of cohorts as a covariate, and that's where you can actually build a cohort that says a combination of encephalopathy or seizures or even cooling of the body as one composite, and you can build that as a row item here.
This will still subsume children of a particular concept, right?
Yes, yeah. I think that's what I was getting at. The descendants are included there. So, so you're sucking in all this. This is the data that you sucked in from the feature extraction, and these are either condition occurrences or condition errors. Either one, they're about the same.
Right.
But the what this brings in is what is the condition group.
Right.
So everything under acute respiratory disease gets included.
Okay. And then the analysis ID, just as you're kind of clicking through there, does that, like, you looked at 203 and that was condition era medium term. So does that mean that, that is, looking, I can't remember what medium term is, but it basically specifies the time. Is that specifying the time window over which it's looking for that concept ID? So yeah. It's material, right? So we need to make sure we're choosing the right time window based on the analysis ID.
Right. So there are so all of this is configurable and customizable.
Sure.
So let's go back to when Cohort Diagnostics initially run. When Cohort Diagnostics initially run, you are allowed to change the time windows and also the various analysis IDs. When it was initially executed and the results published on data.odyssey.org, we used default settings. But we're not confined to the default settings. We can change it. So here is the default covariate settings object, and that's using a package called feature extraction. And all of these items are specified as part of it. And here are certain time windows that start and end days, which we can change. Okay. Yeah. And we can also change some of these items here, like some of these are set to false and some of these are set to true. And we can change that. That depends on the need, and that's study specific. But what the default one, it basically is something that we all came up with, thinking that, oh, this is going to satisfy most of our needs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it has worked for majority of the cases, but we've never done neonatal work. So this is all special, right? So we need to change it. So completely agree, on board. But there is a way to do it, and it's very simple.
So
Yeah, the only thing you're stuck on is the age groups, because those are specific things in there. What, you know, those, the 1003, 2003, 3003, the ones that you had there, those are the 0 to 4, 5 to 9. So you can't get 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4.
That's not applicable for this because everybody's 0.
Everybody's 0, yeah, for this.
Yeah, the main thing would be, even if it's, well, we'll have to figure out how the pretty table, how we could do it with the pretty table, but yeah, being able to alter. So I guess if we alter those time windows, if you scroll down, so let's say we change these intervals. That would just actually that doesn't have any bearing on the pretty table. That would just give us our temporal windows when we're looking at cohort diagnostics output, right? Which is fine. That would allow us to characterize it in ways that are useful. Okay.
Yeah, you can go any time window you want. You can go in like 1 day intervals if you want to.
Right. It doesn't change the meaning of the analysis IDs in that pretty table, right? Because there's some things that have, condition error, medium term. These time windows aren't used in that definition of medium term. Is that right? Like, does that make sense?
It does, but we can. So I see your question. So here I see your point. So that's a good point. I think we'd have realized that. Oh, well, how do we get this 1 day, 1 hour time window? In a previous version of Cohort Diagnostics, we did have pretty table where time windows were allowed to be selected. In the current version of Cohort Diagnostics, we do not. That's okay. We can always go back. I have the old code. We can always go back and do that. So if you need to have a pretty table where you want with different time windows, we can do that. And also, Evan, one more comment. So like this Shiny app is great, but we also have the backend code that generates this Shiny app. So if you want the pretty table to just create like a Word document, we have the code in the background. So we can work together on just generating the static table for a manuscript, which won't be part of a Shiny app.
I was just going to jump in just to make it relatively simple, because just including like the various time windows, I think if we just begin with including some of the salient maternal and neonatal, let me rephrase, including the salient neonatal information, which I've already created a mock-up table. I've already coded out like the concept IDs associated with those. So we could just include those, and the time windows themselves, we could use like the age criteria specifically, and we could just throw out the time window all in itself, because I think that will be a lot of work. It sounds like. Is that a fair statement?
If you can, so the first, could you show the mockup if you have the mockup?
Yeah. So the mockup would look something like this, because I've been working on our local one too, but I don't believe we'll have the maternal characteristics. That's fine. But from a neonatal perspective, like the newborn characteristics, newborn sex, newborn birth weight, the birth weight categories, gestational age categories. And here we're just reporting the occurrence of these in the different data sets. And showing simply just the counts and the standard deviation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll add a few, because I've been working on other manuscripts that are similar. So I could change it to something like this as well. And I could code it, create the concept IDs associated with these. So it would look something similar to this. And instead of like biomarker data or VIS score, it's just the various cohorts, the various EHRs.
Yep.
Is it EHR one? Is it a claims one? What is our data source?
Got it. So the columns would be the cohorts and the row would be concept IDs essentially.
Yep.
And some of these, if you go back to your previous one, the Word document with the mockup,
yep.
Some of these, like on the top, are anything below this neonatal outcomes is something that I think we can easily do, because sepsis is sepsis, PVL, PDA, BPD. Those are clinical ideas that are probably in the condition occurrence table.
Oh.
So we a concept ID for them. We're good, right?
Yeah, these are in the tables already, I believe. So I'll just confirm that.
Perfect. So we can definitely do the neonatal outcomes part, and we can decide on the time windows, and those time windows. Do you think about them as something that acts in the same visit, that is before the person gets discharged, or is it like post discharge, like then as in a part of a follow-up visit sometime in the future, in the first 1 month of life or first 2 months of life post discharge?
Yep, all of these, the ones that I showed, are going to be in the initial visit. So it's like the initial hospitalization, and then I could put together a table for like the long-term outcomes. So those what you would expect at different time points post discharge, and it could be post discharge at 2 months, post discharge at 1 year or 2 years, whatever's available to us.
Okay, so I think we can do definitely can do a table for those. So like we can definitely do a table that has row items are the clinical ideas, which is the neonatal outcomes, and then the columns are time windows. So that will be one for one data source. We can create one table, and then the other one being for one fixed time window. So that could be in the initial visit. That's the visit that they were born in. One column per time window and one row per clinical idea, and we can do that. May not be, it may not be. It's much more easier to just create a table using, for a Word document rather than to a Shiny app. Because
the manuscript outline that I put together with Evan is pretty much that we're showing it's a descriptive paper. Yep. Where, because this is the largest cohort, so we're describing the most common diagnoses that are occurring in your initial hospitalization. So that's one component. And the most common procedures, because we have the procedures as well in this output that are occurring for these patients, and seeing how that varies. And then in terms of outcomes, just using a 5,000 baby cohort, which is, the other cohort is 200, that's the largest one, showing what the outcomes look like at the 1 year mark or the 2 year mark, because that in itself is the opportunity to design trials and therapies and do more work based off these problems that are revealed. That's the intent. So as next steps, can you give me the cohort IDs of the 2 candidate cohorts that you think are final? I had 2. If there's 3, we'll do 3, no problem. Or as many as you want. That's one. The second is the items that are neonatal outcomes that we are interested in, outcomes that on the birth visit and outcomes in the subsequent follow-up. We need to convert the clinical idea into concept IDs. And we also, if we realize that the clinical idea cannot be converted to a concept ID, but has to be another composite something, we can work on that too. But that's a decision that we have to make.
And once that is done, then we can work on the technical solution, actually creating those tables and computing it. Now, if the time windows are something that we did not compute before, we'll recompute it. Recomputing it is not a big deal.
Got it. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep this something that will be accepted by our community. So just trying to, just something that's your initial hospitalization because that's readily accepted, and then just outcome based. So even in terms of like the granularity of like within the first day or the first 28 days, I think we could get away from it and just show just the power of doing the work this way. It's just hospital and then post. That's post discharge. So and I've gone ahead and I've created, I shared it previously. I could share my screen again. This is building on the work from the Stanford group with Nima Agapur. So they actually put this in their Science Translational Medicine paper. So this is from them, and I'm just giving credit. So we already have, in terms of all the outcomes and the concept IDs, the concept names. So we can go ahead and modify this for our HIE work. So just include that where it's all the outcomes, and these are the maternal factors. I know the maternal linkage doesn't exist currently, but we just show this. And these are major outcomes, and the analysis is accordingly.
So do you want, would all of these be in the pretty table?
No. I would say no, because that that pretty table would explode.
Yeah. Okay.
Here, for the pretty table, it would just include these pretty much. Share the screen again. Sorry. The sheet names, because these are the major neonatal outcomes down here. And all of these are the maternal characteristics and the influence on the outcome for ROP.
I see.
So this is great. This actually will speed up things. So maybe we can decide it right now. We decide on the time windows for the follow-up period. We decide on the concept IDs that should go in the pretty table. We mock up the pretty table right now, and I think and we select the cohort IDs, obviously. And then it's about a half a day's work to get to the publishable state.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and finalize those concept IDs, and then the time windows. I think, Evan, please jump in because you've done this along with me and you've seen things outside of our EHR and what's been posted. The time window is just the initial hospitalization, the index event, and then anything after that. So those are the 2 time windows.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to take a guess at a reasonable interval in terms of, you know, when the hospitalizations usually end and what would, so, you know, your kind of comment around 28 days. And this is where, like, I would take guidance from you as well. I think your intuition in terms of, you know, the more we zoom in, the messier things will probably look, just by virtue of being observational data and claims and whatnot. So if we're not, you know, if we don't need to look, you know, zoom in to kind of 0 to 3, 4 to 7 days, 8 to 28 days, if we can go like 0 to 28 days and 28 days to 1 year, 1 year to 2 year, greater than 2 years, like, that might be a nice zoom level to see things without things getting too messy.
Yep, because those are like the critical neonatal periods that those are commonly accepted definitions. There's no uphill battle on it, just describing why we picked it. So it makes clinical sense, conceptual sense.
Okay.
Agreed on that.
That would be a surrogate for post-discharge. Because I don't think, like, we won't be able to kind of dynamically say initial visit and post-discharge across, you know what I mean? Across the cohort. That's the only kind of caveat there. Unless, you know, Gowtham, you can chime in. Can you?
Yeah, Evan, so you build a cohort of their first year of life after discharge.
Okay.
So if you think about that as a different cohort itself.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I was envisioning, because their initial entry criteria was like your inpatient hospitalization, and then we build it exactly, but we changed like the inpatient criteria to like outpatient and just put the age cutoff as higher. So that in itself.
Okay, no, that works.
And in terms of like the definition, I think the best work that we did on our candidate definitions was the 1781966 and then the 1781975. Those are like the two.
So we need to just document it someplace so that we all have aligned the is it possible for you and Kaiser and Evan to document this on the forum thread? Then that will become the input specification for me to work on to generate the content. What I can do is I can create a package that with the time windows that is agreed upon, the cohort IDs that has been agreed upon, the analysis IDs that has been agreed upon, and create a package on Odyssey studies that you can then pull and run on John Hopkins if you want, or on Stanford if you can, Evan. And then we'll run it on J&J data assets, and maybe we'll call for a network study if anybody else wants to participate. We'll commingle the data output, results output, and then create the characterization package. Once I create the study package, we test it out in J&J and then Stanford and John Hopkins. We can then also rally up the community, see anybody else is interested in, and that will be up to you all to reach out. We can help that too. And that will be the largest characterization study on this topic.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Awesome. All right, so looking forward to your forum post detailing what we talked about. The one additional thing I would offer up, actually, I would like to do is some minor changes to your cohort definition, like the age of less than 0.2 may or may not work. So I have some reservations on that. But
I'll just chime in. It has worked way better than I thought it would. Like I had the same reservations. I was like, this is going to bomb on all kinds of data sources, and it actually works. Like it's worked pretty much everywhere I've tried it, and so I was surprised, but pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that it works on many data sources. Maybe it was just something. So we'll figure it out together.
Sure thing. Kaiser, let's link up and we'll figure out a time to kind of tag team on this post. The alterations on the cohort would be other kind of part of the specification. The last thing, so just as a quick editorial comment, this was really useful. Seeing this, and I think it's useful to have it as a live session that was taped, because just that that deep dive into Cohort Diagnostics in terms of pre-table was really useful. The other thing that would be helpful probably in a session like this one time would be kind of figuring out where Cohort Diagnostics slides some of its output in terms of that kind of subsequent manuscript creation from from those data tables. So as opposed to, because any of these we can't really just ride with the screenshots of the Shiny app. Like we're gonna have to configure things. I know it's been done in other publication efforts, but that would be another useful thing to kind of dig into, and probably useful for the community to have it recorded as well, because this was great.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can do together with the HIE group, because our responsibility as this work group is the phenotype development and evaluation, less about the tools. But the HIE group is more active about tool development, and also they have other thoughts. Like there is the strategies effort, but also part of the strategies was a characterization package, a dedicated characterization package that GeneReps has developed, and I think that provides much more stronger capability than what Cohort Diagnostic does. So maybe there is future homes for serving up this need. I mean, what we can offer up is just the need. We need this, but the way it is solved can be done many ways. And what I showed you is just one way. It's not the easiest way, but there's better ways. But let's not use this meeting time to talk about it.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, so that was the main agenda item. The other agenda items was to just go through, but before we go, because there's say Ben and Paulina on the call, I want to make sure those two cohort IDs that were offered up by Evan and Kaiser, Joel, because you're the only other person here who's probably seen the cohort, and Ben and Paulina, I don't know if you have, but I would like to accept that to the OHDSI Phenotype library because it was part of the Phenotype February.
I think it works.
Okay, perfect. All right. So whenever you send it out, I'll just do a editorial QC on it, make minor modification that doesn't impact the logic, and then accept it to the library. Perfect. Okay. So next agenda item was, let's see, what was the agenda items that I sent out?
You had probabilistic phenotype, but Juan's not here today.
Juan's not in here. Okay. So there was some email exchanges that Juan started. Kaiser, thank you. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for the update to everybody.
Thank you guys so much.
So there was an update email that Juan sent out. So he is interested in a large language model similar to, no, it's not large. What did he propose? His proposal was
there's
there's
at least one thing he proposed. The thing we talked about was talking about probabilistic, us using probabilistic phenotyping. But he was also talking about large language models for developing phenotypes. I think that's a little separate.
Okay, so that email thread that he started was on the large language models, and I think Martin is also working on a large language model. I don't know the intersection between the two, or I don't know that if that is something that this work group should be involved in. But there was a conversation about using probabilistic phenotyping and rule-based phenotyping in together, and creating a subgroup on it. You, Evan, and Joel have expressed interest in it. Juan was supposed to, is the one who's stepped up to lead it. Just don't know what the next steps are, or how we can enable him. Have you guys had any conversation with them on that topic?
No, haven't heard further. But I think probably trying to pull off something with this LLM work, and then maybe it'll be something he picks up next.
The other people that are working on, I'll just open the tracker. We can talk about the tracker. So let's see. Acute pancreatitis. Jamie was on the call, but he just dropped off. I know he's not had a chance to work on it, but he is still interested in working on it. Evan, have you touched base with Jamie? You are also a co-lead on this.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I haven't. We've had kind of other phenotypes on my plate, so trying to hit them a little bit sequentially.
Yeah. Anaphylaxis has been in that same stage. I've not heard from Andrea for a long time. I've noticed that she joined a call about a month ago, but I've not received an email response from her. I did email her. Did do a mock-up of this paper with her, and she was interested in continuing the work. So don't know where that is. Appendicitis, Evan, you wanted to take it to the perioperative work group, right? But you're still working on it because of competing priorities.
Yeah, so I actually have almost completely specified I dug through the literature, found some themes I think would be relevant. I specified that Cohort Diagnostics run based on that, but it kind of paused there when the SOS challenge picked up, and the Yorick syndrome work kind of is going to be the first one we push out, and then that'll be probably the next thing we bring to the work group as a phenotype.
Acute neutropenia is something that I said was subsumed by designated medical events. I've shared this idea before. Aza and I and a few others worked on a set of phenotypes called which the European Medical Agency called the designated medical events. We still have to compile them into one body of work. So details to follow. Just don't have any updates yet. SLE, you've done it, Joel, so I'm not going to follow up. Acute hepatic failure, again, subsumed by the designated medical event. We did not make much progress on this in Phenotype February. Adult dermatomyositis, I did get, Dr. McCauley and his team are in touch. They're trying to make progress. They want to first complete the execution in their internal data sets. They have technical difficulty. The technical difficulty is associated with viewing the results of Cohort Diagnostics on their internal servers. Apparently, if you run Cohort Diagnostics Shiny app on a Linux server, it has some security issues that prevents others from looking at the results. So Jamie Gilbert is aware of it. We do not have a solution for it. That's where they are stuck. But the good news is they ran Cohort Diagnostics on their data source. Alan Wu is interested in completing the project. He just has some competing priorities and has not been able to continue the effort. That's all I know. Mirza has set up time in about 2 weeks, so sometime in June. He has some cohorts that he wants and some talking points that he wants to discuss. A positive outcome of this partnership with Mirza is that St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri, has converted its data or is converting its data into OMAP format, which is fantastic. So I think that's great for the community, but we'll have one more data site at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City. St. Luke's Hospital, Kansas City is one of the premier places to do health outcomes research in cardiology. And so having a cardiologist lead OMAP conversion in that hospital is fantastic, I think. We just talked about Hypoxic-Ischemic Encephalopathy. And then regarding optic pathway glioma, neurofibromatosis, those cohorts were presented by Maxime Moynat at the last Phenotype Development Evaluation Workgroup meeting. His cohorts were accepted and pushed to the OHDSI Phenotype library and now have become part of the library. He's interested in converting this into a network study. So I'm in conversation with them about doing a characterization package on the optic pathway glioma for a network study, similar to what you all are thinking in hypoxic-ischemic encephalopathy. So I think this is going to be a good one because we are going to use cohorts that are in the phenotype library to create a network study, which will be the first of its kind. So I'm excited about it. He's on vacation right now, so he's not here in the meeting. That's what I know about the work that was done as Phenotype February. And that's the agenda items. I did really do a release of the Phenotype library package this morning. Basically, the updates are the cohorts from Maxime Moynat. Now, I have an idea that I want to reflect with you guys. That idea is the symptoms and signs cohorts. We talked about it even in December, I believe. So I did an experiment, Joel. I don't know if I shared this with you. Pneumonia phenotype, and I used feature extractions, cohort features in the developed branch, and gave all the symptoms and signs cohorts from the OHDSI Phenotype library as covariates to the feature extraction. So there are currently 65 symptoms and signs cohort definitions in the OHDSI Phenotype library. When I gave that as an input to feature extraction and ran it on the pneumonia cohort, compared to concept ID alone, the symptoms and signs relevant to pneumonia was present in 85% of the persons who met the pneumonia cohort definition. Basically, for me, it was like, what? This is pretty good. You mean 85% of the persons who had pneumonia had at least one symptom or sign that is relevant to pneumonia, like shortness of breath, chest pain, cough, dyspnea, things of that sort. They were present in 85% of the persons in a claims database. So this, our anecdotal understanding is that symptoms and signs have poor capture in claims data. But the observation, at least for the pneumonia using feature cohorts, was that, wow, this is pretty good. I want to test that.
How many did you use? How many was in that set? 65?
there are 65. I think I used 5 or 6 of them, like the ones that you expect to happen with pneumonia.
Oh, 5 or 6. Okay.
Yeah. So the
So 5 or
composite of
6. So
those,
85% of the people in your pneumonia cohort had, let's say, 6 of the things, all 6.
correct. So this brings up a lot of interesting ideas, like of temporal association of symptoms and signs with the index dates of various cohorts. There is clustering of symptoms and signs, and probably a blue ocean opportunity around symptoms and signs. But before we get to that, answering the questions, we have 65 cohorts that are probably symptoms and signs like dyspnea, chest pain, so on. I would like to get them accepted into the phenotype library through some bulk process. Let's all.
And you have clinical descriptions for each of them?
Do we really need clinical descriptions of symptoms and signs?
Yeah, all right. It's good. Let's throw out cough. You're going to put clinical description for cough. I mean, that's the. So I guess the question is, so you're doing it as cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have cough in there for one of the 65, for instance?
Yes.
Is that anything more than cough? The concept ID for cough?
It was just most of them. I think it had like nocturnal cough as something that was not part of the descendants. So it's essentially a concept set. Right.
Okay. So it's a concept set rather than just the concept ID. Okay.
That kind of, my surprise is along the lines of Joel's comment, right? Where I think you built these out so you would know better than us. It's surprising to me because you're right. Like at the concept set level, we always struggle in terms of just seeing pretty low numbers. But you're right. They are kind of, when you think about that Cohort Diagnostics output, there is kind of almost like a buckshot of things that look alike, but are wound up, that wind up being different, but somehow aren't subsumed at the concept level. And that I always kind of struggle with it a little bit. It's like, why aren't these kind of being drawn up together under a single parent? But doing it I guess with the cohorts, that's the biggest impact, is that you do draw in those things into at least one thing that you then know what to look for in that output, right? You look for that symptom cohort, as opposed to, I don't know, when you get the feature extraction output, you got the parent in there somewhere, and then all its children are also in there, and it just, maybe just looks messier. But it's a very different experience, very different kind of result to hear about 85%, that, as opposed to the things that we're used to, which is like, you see it in like 10 or 20%. You're like, well, what's good enough?
Yeah, but that's at the concept ID level, where somebody might have had a child of cough, and then you have to bring them all together.
So the difference between cough as a concept ID and this cohort is, this one I have cough and sputum finding. So it's a subtle difference. So that's
what do you have counts in this?
I do, but this is the public version. So let's see, it depends upon. Yeah, so sputum finding only had 1 million, and it's predominantly 384 million here is cough. I think this is the concept set study, network study.
Yeah, I guess one of the things, and you guys are clinicians, I'll just throw this out as a non-clinical idea. So if you were going to do this phenotype as cough and sort of propose this to be a reasonable phenotype for cough, if you just look at the cough ones, now you've included sputum in there, but you have like cough suppression is one of the children of cough. I don't know. It seems like if you want, we maybe not need this is sort of where you want a clinical description, because if you were going to, if you look through that list there, I mean, cough suppression is not huge. I mean, you have 380 million coughs and 66,000 cough suppressions. but does cough suppression really belong in a cough group that you would want to know? If you want to know this, did your pneumonia patient have cough? And I'm just throwing cough suppression. Maybe it's a bad thing, but does cough suppression belong in there? Do you want to see that from a clinical standpoint, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see the need here as like somewhat adjacent, to the, the need for excellent alignment with a clinical with the clinical idea, like the need for symptom cohorts or just cohorts as features. I think it's just one of those things that would improve our ability to kind of characterize our target cohorts. And so, to the extent that they need to kind of go through the same process, I don't feel as strongly about it. Because we're proposing them in a different use case, and if they go into the phenotype library, we just kind of maybe label them as something that have gone through with a bit of a different process, but they're really there to be the features against which other cohorts are characterized.
That's right. So the purpose, it may be a little noisy, Joel, to Evan's point, but it's satisfying certain types of use case, and the limitations of that is this is an imprecise, noisy, imprecise because it has not gone through our full phenotype development evaluation with a agreed upon clinical description. But it's used, but for the purpose of being features for another cohort, it might be good. Like here is dyspnea, so you may use dyspnea and its descendants, but the concepts and expression that I'm proposing for it is difficulty breathing and abnormal breathing, which is different from dyspnea.
Yeah, well, does one of those, is dyspnea actually in there?
There.
Yeah, dyspnea is in there. Okay.
But difficulty breathing has, record counts of its own.
Yeah.
So that's the general idea.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, that's kind of small.
But it takes us to it has multiple applications. Like you're now thinking about a standard table 1, which has symptoms and signs.
Yeah, I mean, it might see now the problem is you're labeling it dyspnea, and especially from a clinician's or physician standpoint, they're going to say, oh, I know what dyspnea means. But now you've included in there abnormal breathing. So are all clinicians going to say, oh yeah, it's dyspnea, it's abnormal breathing, and dyspnea subsumes, you're assuming dyspnea subsumes abnormal breathing, and I think dyspnea is I think it would be a subset of abnormal breathing.
So we could take the tact of creating just the overview section, like 2 lines, maybe 1 line per phenotype to describe the idea that it's trying to capture. Yeah. So what does that label mean? It's better than just dropping a word, dyspnea, right? We're actually, in 1 line or 2 lines summarizing what we who developed it understand it is. And if there are subtle nuances like this, we just call it out.
Yeah, I mean, that might be to do a subset of the clinical description, just so people know when you see dyspnea, when you see it. So, well, I guess the other thing is.
No, sorry, Joel, I do have to drop off because it's past 10. We have to end the call. But here, like the logic description component here could be an area that we can capture. So we have as part of the standard, like here it says all events of dyspnea, including difficulty breathing or abnormal breathing.
Yeah.
So we could use that to call out decisions that has been made.
Right. And then the other thing is you don't have to call it dyspnea. You could call it dyspnea, difficulty breathing, normal breathing. Yeah, or something like that. Call it something else so that people know what you're looking at, because people aren't going to dig that deep. Anyway, all right, I got to go also. So
yeah, so think about it. So the idea here is like, I've done 65. Let's get it to the library. Let's figure out as a group, do it. I don't want to do it as one person. I think we should do it as a group, as a community. And so let's think about it. I think the value proposition is immense. It's going to make most of our future work much more stronger.
Yeah.
That's the general idea. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, guys.
Great
Bye.
meeting. Thanks.